If you've been part of the gospel music community, you know that silence can be deafening. When Angie Clark goes quiet, when the woman behind one of gospel music's most beloved voices suddenly stops sharing, that silence becomes unbearable. For weeks, thousands of fans have been holding their breath, desperately searching for answers to questions they were too afraid to ask. The speculation has been relentless, the rumors devastating, and through it all, Angie remained silent, until just moments ago, when she finally broke that silence in a way that has left the entire gospel community reeling. What she revealed changes everything, and what you're about to hear will shake you to your core. This is the raw, heartbreaking truth that Angie Clark has been carrying, and her message will destroy you in the most beautiful way possible. But first, you need to understand the storm that's been building, because this isn't just about a gospel legend and his wife. This is about love that refuses to break, faith that stands firm when everything crumbles, and a family teaching us what it means to walk through the valley of death while still singing praises. Over the past several weeks, social media has been in absolute chaos. If you follow any gospel music pages, if you're part of any Christian music groups, if you have any connection whatsoever to the world that Guy Penrod helped build over his decades of ministry, then you've seen it, you've felt it. The confusion started small, just little whispers and concerns, but it grew into something massive and uncontrollable. Concert dates that had been scheduled months in advance were suddenly canceled without explanation. Fan pages that had promoted Guy's upcoming appearances began posting vague apologies about postponements, offering refunds but no real answers about why the legendary vocalist wouldn't be taking the stage. Then Angie, who had been so consistent with her weekly videos and daily interactions with fans, just stopped. Her Instagram feed, which had been filled with glimpses of their life, their farm, their grandchildren, went dark. No explanations, no goodbyes, just silence. That's when the cryptic prayer requests started appearing. Friends of the family, people who had toured with Guy, folks from their church in Tennessee, they all began posting the same kind of messages. Vague but urgent pleas for prayer, scripture verses about walking through valleys and weathering storms, close friends in the gospel community sharing that they were interceding for the Penrod family, but never saying why, never giving details, just asking everyone to pray harder, to believe bigger, to trust God through whatever was happening behind closed doors. And naturally, when people who love you refuse to tell you what's wrong but beg you to pray anyway, the human mind starts filling in the blanks. The speculation became wild and uncontrolled. Facebook posts began appearing, claiming that Guy had passed away, complete with rest-in-peace messages and memorial tributes that sent shockwaves through the community. Twitter threads exploded with conflicting information. Some people swearing they'd heard from reliable sources that he'd died, others insisting he was fine, but dealing with a family crisis, still others suggesting that maybe the marriage was in trouble, that perhaps after 4 decades together something had finally fractured. Fan pages that had celebrated Guy's ministry for years suddenly became memorial sites, posting career retrospectives and sharing their favorite performances as if he were already gone. The confusion was maddening because nobody could verify anything, and the family remained completely silent through all of it. Thousands of fans found themselves caught in this horrible limbo between grief and hope, not knowing whether to mourn or pray, whether to accept what the rumors claimed or hold out for better news. People were literally torn apart by not knowing, checking their phones every few minutes for updates, calling friends who might have connections to the family, desperately seeking any shred of truth in an ocean of speculation and fear. So, the question that everyone has been asking, the question that has kept people awake at night and driven them to their knees in prayer, is simply this: what is the truth about Guy Penrod's health? And more importantly, where is Angie in all of this chaos, and why has she been so silent when her husband's fans need her most? To understand why this silence has been so devastating, why the entire gospel community has been in such turmoil, you need to understand who Guy Penrod and Angie Clark really are. Because this isn't just about a famous singer and his wife. This is about two people who have represented something sacred to millions of believers around the world. Guy Penrod didn't just have a career in gospel music. He didn't just sing songs on stage and collect paychecks. For 14 years, he was the lead vocalist for the Gaither vocal band, which means he was part of gospel music royalty. His voice became the soundtrack to countless lives, the sound that people heard during their darkest moments, the melody that carried them through loss and pain and doubt. When Guy sang about heaven, you believed it was real. When he testified about God's faithfulness, you felt it in your bones. He wasn't performing, he was testifying. He was preaching with every note, ministering with every phrase, and you could tell that he meant every single word that came out of his mouth. But Guy's story doesn't start with fame or stages or recordings. It starts in 1983 at a small Christian college where a young man with a gift for singing met a quiet, faithful young woman named Angie Clark. Their love story has become legendary in gospel music circles because it represents something that seems almost impossible in today's world. They met, they fell in love, they got married in 1985, and from that moment forward, they have been inseparable. I mean truly inseparable. For over 40 years of marriage, they have made it their practice to never be apart for more than 3 nights in a row. Think about that for a moment. 40 years, thousands of concerts, countless opportunities for Guy to tour alone or for Angie to stay home with the kids. But they refused. They built their entire lives around the radical idea that marriage means staying together no matter what, that commitment means more than convenience, that love requires presence even when it's hard. They raised 8 children together, and not just in a house somewhere while Guy traveled for his career. No, they raised those 8 children on a tour bus, dragging them from city to city, venue to venue, teaching them that ministry was a family calling, not just dad's job. They became known throughout the gospel music world as the perfect family. And while no family is truly perfect, the Penrods came closer than most. They demonstrated year after year what it looks like when two people actually live out their faith, instead of just singing about it. When they sang about faithfulness, you knew they practiced it at home. When they testified about God's provision, you knew they'd lived through lean times and abundant times and stayed grateful through both. When they preached about family and commitment and standing firm on God's promises, every word carried weight because everyone knew they weren't just talking, they were showing. So when a family this strong, this united, this rooted in faith suddenly asks for prayer without explanation, when Angie Clark, who has been an open book about their lives, suddenly goes silent, when Guy Penrod, who has never missed a commitment in his career, starts canceling concerts, you know something is seriously wrong. You know that whatever they're facing is so big, so overwhelming, so devastating, that even their legendary faith is being tested in ways we can't imagine. And that's what made the silence so terrifying, because if the Penrods are scared, if they need this much prayer, if they're pulling back from public life to circle the wagons around their family, then whatever is happening must be absolutely catastrophic. The warning signs started appearing in the summer of 2025, and if you were paying close attention, you could see that something had shifted in Guy's life. He began canceling concerts, which was unprecedented for a man who had built his entire reputation on reliability and faithfulness to his commitments. These weren't just small local appearances that could be easily rescheduled. These were major events, festivals that had been planned for months, venues that had sold hundreds of tickets specifically because Guy Penrod's name was on the marquee. And yet, one by one, they were being cancelled with only brief apologies and no real explanations. The official statements were professional and polite, but they said nothing of substance, just vague references to family needs and health concerns that required Guy to step back from public ministry for a season. People who saw Guy in person during this time began noticing physical changes that alarmed them. Close friends in the gospel music community started having quiet conversations about how different he looked. There was weight loss that seemed too rapid to be intentional. There was an exhaustion in his eyes that went beyond just being tired from touring. There was pain in the way he moved, the way he carried himself, the subtle wince when he thought no one was looking. Something was clearly wrong with his body, and those who loved him most were increasingly worried about what might be causing these changes. But when they asked, they got the same non-answers everyone else received. Everything's fine. We're trusting God. Just keep us in your prayers. Nothing that gave any real information, nothing that eased the growing concern, and Angie, sweet Angie, who had always been so open and warm with their fans, who had built such a strong connection with thousands of people through her weekly videos and social media presence, she began changing too. Her posts became less frequent. The videos that used to come every week started showing up every 2 weeks, then every 3, then not at all. And when she did appear on camera, something was different. You could see it in her eyes, in the way her smile seemed forced, in how the light that had always radiated from her seemed to be dimming. She was going through the motions of normalcy, trying to maintain the appearance that everything was okay. But anyone who truly knew her could tell that something was breaking her heart. She would post scripture verses about trusting God in the darkness, about walking by faith and not by sight, about the valley of the shadow of death and fearing no evil. Beautiful verses that should have been encouraging, but in context, they felt more like distress signals, like someone drowning and reaching for any lifeline they could find. Friends of the family began asking questions more directly. What's going on with the Penrods? Why has Guy stopped performing? Is everything okay with their marriage? Is there a family crisis? The questions were endless, and the answers were non-existent, which only made the speculation grow more intense and more frightening. Prayer chains formed across the country as churches and ministries that had been blessed by Guy's music began interceding for the family without even knowing what they were praying for. Just pray for the Penrods. Something's wrong. They need us now more than ever. Then came October, and everything went dark. The social media accounts that had been posting sporadically just stopped completely. No updates, no videos, no pictures, no engagement with fans. The website that had always kept people informed about tour dates and ministry updates showed nothing new. It was like the Penrod family had simply vanished from public life, retreating behind walls that no one could see over and doors that no one could knock on. The silence became suffocating. The gospel community that had supported them for decades found itself helpless, unable to reach them, unable to help, unable to even know how to pray specifically for whatever they were facing. And in that vacuum of information, the rumors grew darker and more desperate. On November 18th, Angie posted something that broke the internet. A photograph showing an open Bible turned to Psalm 23, the Valley of Death passage. On the pages sat a single gold wedding ring, their 40-year covenant symbol. Underneath, just 3 words, "Please pray for us." No context, no explanation, just a Bible, a ring, and a desperate plea. Within an hour, thousands of comments appeared. Within hours, tens of thousands of shares. The gospel community went into crisis mode. Bill Gaither reportedly called people in tears. Prayer vigils were organized within hours across all 50 states. The speculation was unbearable. Some thought Guy had died. Others feared divorce. Many suspected terminal illness. For days, the silence continued with no follow-up, no clarification. The waiting became torture. This limbo between fear and faith, until today. Just hours ago, Angie posted a video that answered every question and broke every heart watching. She appeared exhausted but strong, her voice trembling but resolved. She confirmed what many feared. Guy Penrod has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis came in October. The prognosis is 3 to 6 months. 40 years of marriage compressed into a timeline measured in weeks rather than years. Angie explained Guy wanted his fans to know the truth. He didn't want speculation or misinterpretation. He wanted people to pray specifically and walk this final journey with him. She thanked everyone for prayers, asked for privacy, and shared Guy's greatest wish, to keep singing as long as his body allows. All 8 children came home immediately when the diagnosis was confirmed, forming a protective circle of love. They decided to love each other harder than this cancer could hurt them, to squeeze 40 more years of memories into whatever days remain. When Guy received the diagnosis, his first response wasn't anger or fear. He looked at Angie and said, "Well, honey, I guess we're going home to Jesus sooner than we planned." His only request was if he could keep singing until the end. They started porch nights, intimate concerts live-streamed from their home. No fancy production, just Guy with his guitar, singing the songs that defined his ministry. Thousands watch every night, witnessing what faith looks like when it costs everything. The most viral moment happened during one of these porch nights. Guy was singing, "I'll Know I'll See You Again," that hymn about heaven and reunion. He was making it through the verses fine, his voice still strong. But then he looked at Angie, really looked at her, and the weight of what that song means crashed over him. His voice broke. He couldn't continue. Here was a man who has sung professionally for decades, and he couldn't finish because the woman he's loved for 40 years was sitting there, and their time is running out. Then Tyler, one of their sons, picked up where his father left off. Then another child joined. All 8 Penrod children finished that song while their father held their mother, both weeping, surrounded by the family they built. That moment has been viewed over 20 million times. People can't stop watching because it's real. Grief reveals what was loved. And watching the Penrod family grieve shows exactly how much love has been built over 4 decades of faithfulness. Guy is currently receiving hospice care at home, surrounded by family. All 8 children visit regularly with grandchildren. Every evening, they gather and sing, making 40 more years of memories in just weeks. Angie, who always stood in the background, has become the strongest person in the room, holding the family together while loving her husband through the hardest season of their lives. The outpouring from the gospel community has been overwhelming. The Isaacs posted tearful videos, churches hold all-night prayer vigils, fellow artists share stories about Guy's kindness and humility. Thousands of fans have written letters and made quilts, sharing testimonies about how his music changed their lives. Stories of marriages saved, people pulled back from suicide, lives transformed because one man used his gift faithfully for decades. What Guy and Angie are teaching us transcends gospel music or celebrity. They're showing us how to face death with grace, how to love when it hurts, how to worship in the valley. They're demonstrating that 40 years of faithful investment pays dividends when you need it most. 8 children rallying around their parents is the fruit of decades of intentional parenting and sacrificial love. They built this family for precisely this moment, when everything is falling apart and all you have is each other and Jesus. This is faith in action. Not just singing about heaven when it's theoretical, but preparing to go there when death is knocking. Not just preaching trust when life is easy, but living it when God allows something that makes no sense. Guy Penrod has spent his career singing about faith and hope and God's promises, and now we're watching to see if he actually believes what he's been singing. And the answer is devastatingly beautiful. Yes, he does, even now, even when it costs everything. He still believes, he still worships, he still sings. Angie's silence has been broken, but the story isn't over. Guy is still here, still singing when he has strength. The family is still making memories, still gathering on that porch, still choosing love through every painful moment. Fans worldwide are still praying, still watching, still learning from a family teaching us what really matters. If you want to support the Penrods, keep them in your prayers. Pray for Guy's comfort and peace. Pray for Angie's strength. Pray for their 8 children. Watch the porch night videos if you can. Witness what worship looks like when it's pure devotion. Share your Guy Penrod stories in the comments. Let the family know his faithfulness mattered, that the seeds he planted are still bearing fruit. One day, all of us will face our final song. One day, all of us will walk through that valley Psalm 23 talks about. Guy Penrod is showing us how to sing that final song with grace, how to face death without fear, how to trust God when the path is dark and uncertain. Angie is showing us what love looks like when it refuses to quit, when it stands firm as everything crumbles, when it chooses faithfulness over comfort every single day. Love doesn't stop when the song ends. It just changes key. The Penrod family is teaching us how to find the new melody, how to keep singing when your voice breaks, how to worship through tears and trust through pain. This is their legacy, not just the albums and concerts and awards, but this raw, honest, beautiful testimony of faith under fire. This demonstration that 40 years of covenant love creates something strong enough to withstand even death's approach. This proof that building your life on Jesus isn't just Sunday school talk, but the only foundation that holds when everything else gives way.